Alexander Isak is training alone in Spain with his future up in the air. The Newcastle striker told the club he wants time to consider his future with interest from Liverpool. Let's go live to St James's Park and our reporter Keith Downey. Good afternoon. Are Newcastle aware of this then, Keith?
Yeah, Rob, they are aware that Alexander Isak is over in San Sebastian training, recovering on his own. Look, I know the optics of this aren't great from the outsider looking in, but look, if anyone who covers the club and knows how Alexander operates, it's not a surprise that he's working with his own team. He's got a team of sports scientists, physicians, a doctor who all help him. And a number of times when he's been injured over the past couple of years, he's actually travelled away from the UK to go and recover with them, and it's something we've actually spoken to Eddie Howe before in his news conferences, and Eddie Howe said, look, they're aware of it and they work in conjunction with Alexander Isak's team. So I'm not that surprised, because you have to remember that the Newcastle first team squad, the management team, the backroom staff, the physios, club doctor, they're all over right now in South Korea as part of Newcastle's pre-season tour. But obviously, as I say, the optics of it aren't great. The fact that Isak, he could be here with his team in Newcastle, but instead he's chosen to be with his team recovering in the Basque region of Spain. So of course he's had to fly there, and one of the reasons given to us was why he didn't fly to Singapore and then on to South Korea was that it wouldn't be beneficial for him being on a long haul flight. But he's managed to travel there to recover from this thigh injury that he has, this minor thigh injury that was quoted by the club just over a week ago when they headed out to Singapore. So look, I think a lot of the Newcastle fans upset and angry about this because it appears that he's checked out, but I would expect Alexander Isak back here in the northeast next week when Newcastle return from their pre-season tour to sit down. He'll have talks with Eddie Howe, and then I guess they'll take it from there. So yeah, he's away from the northeast, trying to get his body in the right place, probably trying to get his mind in the right place, with so much speculation surrounding him off the back of that informal approach from Liverpool 2 weeks ago. And then what we heard and told you last week was that he told Newcastle he wants to explore a potential move away from the club this summer. So something tells me this isn't the last we've heard of this. More will come from this, I guess, when Alexander Isak returns at the start of next week.
You mentioned Eddie Howe there, Keith, and he is being asked constantly on that tour of Asia that you also touched on about Alexander Isak. Every time he sits down, he said it's not in his full control, but I imagine this will be getting quite frustrating for him.
Yeah, I think the amount of time, you're right, will be frustrating Eddie Howe. I think the logistics of it will be frustrating Eddie Howe. The fact he's across the other side of the world in Seoul in South Korea right now, and very far away from Alexander Isak, who's in San Sebastian at Real Sociedad's training ground. And look, I think it's worth adding at this moment as well to say that he's not training with Real Sociedad. Sociedad are away from the training ground themselves on their own pre-season preparations, and the training ground is empty and he's just using their facilities. Remember, he formerly played for Real Sociedad for 3 years, and Newcastle signed him from them 3 years ago for £63 million. So look, I think Eddie Howe will be frustrated that he can't sit down and talk to Alexander Isak face to face. I think that was part of the frustration when they jetted out there over a week ago and he was left behind. There's a vacuum, there's a space, and there's time, but perhaps maybe that time will help matters. Maybe it'll give Isak a bit of time to reflect on things, and I do expect us to get a resolution one way or the other soon. I would be surprised if this one drags on right until the end of the transfer window due to the figures, the money that's involved, eye-watering sums of money. It's not the sort of transfer I would expect to go through in transfer deadline day. So I think everyone involved here at Newcastle will want some kind of resolution to this one way or the other fairly swiftly, and that's why I feel it's key at the start of next week when both Newcastle return from South Korea and Alexander Isak returns from Spain. But you can just looking at Eddie Howe and his body language, it looks as though he's got the weight of the world on his shoulders at the moment. And remember Eddie Howe was in hospital not so long ago with a problem of his own, so he probably needs to look after himself as much as anything else at the moment.
You spoke there about eye-watering sums of money. Real Sociedad would stand to receive a little bit of that if Isak was to be sold.
Yeah, well, the sums that are being quoted, I mean, my understanding is that Newcastle would not sell, well, they don't want to sell Alexander Isak. Of course they don't. He's one of the best strikers in the world. But if he was to go, it would take an offer of around £150 million, which, of course, is a Premier League record. So a huge sum of money. Remember, Newcastle paid, as I mentioned earlier, 58 plus 5, so £63 million package for Isak's services 3 years ago. Sociedad would stand to make 10% of anything over £60 million. So if Isak was to go for £150 million, they would stand to make 10% of that £90 million profit. So look, they've got an eye on the situation as well. He's clearly got a good relationship with the club, and that is why they've allowed him to use his training facilities over in San Sebastian. I guess everyone here at Newcastle United will just be hoping that he comes back in a better frame of mind and a better shape physically than he was when the club travelled out to Singapore on the first step of that pre-season tour just over a week ago.
How realistic would it be if Newcastle did need to replace him that Benjamin Sesko would be the player they could sign?
Yeah, look, I mean, it was clear that Hugo Ekitike was the player that he wanted. Instead, he went to Liverpool. I think Sesko is a player that they also hugely admire, and he would be a real option for them. I think it would be difficult for Newcastle to even consider allowing Alexander Isak to leave without a high-end striker to come in and replace him, and I include Benjamin Sesko in that. Look, if Newcastle were to manage to bring Sesko to the football club, you would suggest that would open the door for Alexander to leave if Liverpool put a bid in that's accepted by Newcastle. And of course, I've already quoted the figures that Newcastle are looking for. But of course, Newcastle, a little bit wary, I think, that Manchester United are also keen on Sesko, and they've had their fingers burned a number of times already this summer. By my last count, around about 8 players they've gone for and have chosen to go elsewhere. So they keep losing out to other clubs, big clubs of course. They've already lost out to Manchester United for Bryan Mbeumo, and I think it'd be a really difficult one for them to take if they were to lose out on Sesko as well. And you think if they were to lose Sesko to Manchester United, that would then have ramifications in terms of what they do with Alexander Isak, because there is no way Newcastle United would even consider allowing Alexander Isak to leave if they don't have a replacement and a top-end replacement lined up to come in and replace him. So look, it's going to be a really interesting couple of weeks. As I say, I don't think it's going to go right on until the end of the window, but I feel as though we're going to get a little bit more on this next week once Isak returns, Newcastle return, and they can all sit down and speak to each other face to face.
Thank you very much indeed. So that is Newcastle covered. Let's round up the rest of the day's transfer news. Michael Bridge is alongside me. Let's start with Tottenham, shall we? Eyeing a midfielder with Premier League experience.
Yes, we can tell you now this afternoon that Tottenham Hotspur and Bayern Munich are in talks over a potential loan deal for João Palhinha, the former Fulham midfielder, who's brilliant for Fulham. That earned him a big money move to Bayern Munich. It's not really worked out for Palhinha at Bayern. He's only started 6 Bundesliga games last season, only played 45 minutes at the Club World Cup, but I understand this would be a straight loan, no obligation or no option as it stands. But if it was to happen, it would give Tottenham some real experience in that sort of number 6 central midfield role. I think there'll be some departures as well, but yeah, they do need a few players in as well, and that would add some real quality in that midfield. Keith
was just talking about forward players that Newcastle might target. One of those is Johan Wissa. You could tell us a little bit about his day today.
Yeah, it's turning into quite a saga, isn't it? I mean, it's been some summer for Brentford, isn't it? And we know Wissa wants the move. This was him arriving at training this morning around 9 a.m. up the road from us here, Brentford's training ground. Now, we can tell you that we understand that he did not train with his Brentford teammates. We've reported that he's angry and disappointed with the club's approach amid interest from Newcastle. That's him leaving at midday. He's adamant he wants to leave and he feels he might not get a chance of playing in the Champions League. It's Newcastle, the club he wants to join, and goodness me, do Newcastle want to bring in some new faces. But Brentford are insisting Wissa is not for sale, and there does seem to be quite a difference in valuation between the two clubs.
Let's just finish with Nottingham Forest, who have confirmed the signing of their own today.
It's been quite a few days for Nottingham Forest, isn't it? With Morgan Gibbs-White committing his future to the club, and now they've signed Dan Ndoye from Bologna in a deal worth £34 million, 5-year contract, be off interest from Napoli as well. So a good few days for Nottingham Forest ahead of what's going to be a very, very busy campaign for them with them in Europe.
Michael, thank you very much indeed. Manchester United's Rasmus HOJLUND has vowed to fight for his future at Old Trafford after the club made Benjamin SESKO their top transfer target if they bring in a striker. HOJLUND scored United's opening goal in their 4-1 friendly win over Bournemouth last night, but has struggled since a £72 million move from Atalanta in 2023. We reported earlier this month that AC Milan were exploring a deal. Well, after that Bournemouth friendly, HOJLUND said, I think the most important thing for me is just to keep working hard and stay focused, and then obviously we'll see what happens. I think my plan is very clear, and that is for me to stay and fight for my spot, whatever happens. Competition is fine with me, it sharpens me, I'm more than ready, I'm feeling sharp, so I'm welcoming everything that comes. I think it's good with competition, and it only sharpens the team.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Fabrizio Romano here as always to keep you posted on the transfer market. Today guys, many things to mention, something to add on SESKO Garnacho, Xavi Simons, HOJLUND, a new Chelsea signing and more. Let's jump into it together. In football, as in life, not everything happens on the pitch. There are moments of pressure, uncertainty, or times when things just feel off, and having someone to talk to can make a real difference. That's why I want to take a moment to thank BetterHelp for being the paid partner of this video. BetterHelp is an online therapy platform that connects you with credentialed therapists completely online. You can talk from wherever you are at a time that works for you. Whether you are dealing with stress, anxiety, or just want someone to talk to, BetterHelp is a great place to start. You simply fill out a short questionnaire and then you will be matched with a therapist that fits your own needs. And if you use my link or visit betterhelp.com/yourlink, you will get 10% of your first month. Mental health matters on and off the field. Here we go. And so guys, many updates as usual on the market. Let me start with the recent news a few minutes before recording this video. Frenkie de Jong announcing that he will sign a new contract at Barcelona. So Frenkie de Jong and Jules Koundé both extending their contract at Barca. That's a really important news for Barcelona, especially for the case of Frenkie de Jong, which was quite urgent for the club. Deco has been on it in the recent weeks to fix everything. And then Jules Koundé will also sign in the next days until June 2030. So good news for Barcelona, good news for Manchester City. I wanted to start from Manchester City because there is an exclusive update and it's on Nico O'Reilly. Because for Nico it's been a strange summer. At some point around the end of June, beginning of July, Manchester City started receiving important proposals. 2 approaches from Premier League, but 2 official bids from the same club in Germany, Bayer Leverkusen. Erik ten Hag indicated Nico O'Reilly as the perfect signing for present and future of the club. Bayer Leverkusen presented really important money on the table to Manchester City for Nico. The answer was no chance. Man City decided to keep the player and also to make the player happy and to make the player feel his importance at the club. After some initial conversations on new contract they had in January, in February, March, now new deal almost agreed between Nico O'Reilly and Manchester City. So agreement imminent, the player is set to sign a new deal at the club, increase the salary, is going to be important, of course, for Manchester City present and future, and also new squad number for Nico. Then guys, more to mention, many questions on the situation of Chelsea. On Chelsea, let me start by saying Jorel Hato is a done deal. Is a here we go since yesterday. It's not a surprise if you're following my channels, my platforms, and here on YouTube, because I've been telling you that this deal was going to happen. So it was just a matter of time, very, very close at some point. Details, 43 million euros to Ajax, so this is going to be the transfer fee. Also, the player will sign a 7-year contract with an option included till 2033. Everything done for Jorel Hato, who is traveling today, who is authorized to travel today for the medical test and the contract signing as a new Chelsea player from Ajax. Remember that he's going to play as a centre-back, but also as a left-back. And in that position, left-back, Cucurella stays. Cucurella, at the moment, there is nothing with Al Nassr. And Cucurella will be offered a new contract by Chelsea, so conversations are starting for new deal for Marc Cucurella. Let me maintain my position on Chelsea and Alejandro Garnacho. I'm not changing my mind. I've been telling you for weeks that Chelsea are interested in Garnacho, that Garnacho wants to stay in the Premier League, that despite links with Italian, Saudi and more clubs, also Bayer Leverkusen, the focus of Garnacho is Premier League. Garnacho wants to continue in Premier League and Chelsea are there. Chelsea are interested in Garnacho. Chelsea made some contact to be informed of the situation of the player. Then it's going to be also, obviously, a topic of valuations between Chelsea and Manchester United, but Garnacho remains a strong topic internally at Chelsea. A name being mentioned on a daily basis internally at the club, and Alejandro Garnacho is a serious possibility for Chelsea this summer. This is not something new, but something I want to repeat, because there are many stories on, sometimes people say the concerns on the attitude of Garnacho, or maybe doubts on the price, or the salary, or many other things. Chelsea are quite convinced about Garnacho being a good opportunity. Now the point is going to be how much Manchester United want, and also for Chelsea, now in this moment, it's really important to focus also on the outgoings. Mark Guiu can go to Sunderland, Armando Broja has to leave, Raheem Sterling with Fulham and more clubs interested, Joe Felix went to Al Nassr, Nico Jackson could be another player ready to leave, Christopher Nkunku could be on his way out because he remains one of the players available this summer. So Chelsea are focusing on selling players as soon as possible, in this moment of the window. And then attack. Alejandro Garnacho, for sure, remains a target, and Xavi Simons absolutely remains a deal ongoing. As I told you, it's not about official bid, first bid, rejected, this and that. There is a very good relationship between Chelsea and Leipzig. So the two clubs are talking directly, club to club, and the conversation is going very well. Then the same is happening also on player side, work in progress on the contract. Then for Chelsea, it's also important to create some space, so to sell some players, and then to try complete the situation and the deal for Xavi Simons. So Xavi Simons and Garnacho, as I told you last week, and let me repeat again, these are two separate topics at Chelsea. It's not Xavi Simons or Garnacho. Chelsea want Xavi Simons and Alejandro Garnacho. Then we will see if it's going to be possible. We will see what's going to happen in the negotiations. I'm not the one taking care of talks or negotiations, so obviously we have to wait and see what happens. But Chelsea are working on both Xavi Simons and Alejandro Garnacho. This is not an alternative topic, and so keep an eye on this scenario. Also, guys, as always, important to mention the topic of the moment. And this, of course, not only Alexander Isak, you can find everything in the video from yesterday. I keep repeating to you that the player is waiting for Liverpool, that the player wants Liverpool, you know that. But on Benjamin Sesko is really open to joining Manchester United even without European football, even without Champions League football. So Sesko is very open to the conversation with Manchester United. Now the conversation between United and Sesko is entering into details of the project, of the vision, what they want to do. So not only financial details, because Man United are talking to Red Bull Leipzig and Man United are talking to the agent, but also the project. So Man United are entering into details of the vision they have for Benjamin Sesko, and the player is open to the move. Then Benjamin Sesko is also talking to Newcastle, because as I told you, Newcastle are prepared to pay whatever they want. Leipzig and Sesko. Of course, whatever they want, I don't mean that they can pay anything, but what's needed? So the price tag from Leipzig, Newcastle are ready to pay. The salary wanted by Sesko, Newcastle are ready to pay. So if Sesko decides to go to Newcastle, play Champions League football, be the superstar, Sesko in that case would be ready to go, because Newcastle are ready to pay. But Sesko is also considering Man United. As I told you yesterday, Sesko is not deciding today, I told you yesterday. He's not deciding tomorrow, I keep repeating now. So it's going to take some days, not too long, but some days for Sesko to decide. Man United feel that the player is open to having this conversation, to discussing about the project, the vision. And so Sesko, Man United is something that is absolutely concrete. That's the point, that's the story as of now. Then guys, on Rasmus HOJLUND, you remember probably, I did a video a few weeks ago, when we had many rumors on HOJLUND. But at the moment, Rasmus HOJLUND keeps repeating, also after scoring in a friendly game against Bournemouth in the last 24 hours, HOJLUND says, I want to stay, I want to fight for my place, I'm staying at Manchester United, I'm ready for the competition, I'm not scared. So this is the position of the player. But this is the position of the player also because I can guarantee to you, till today, end of July, no one from Manchester United, management, director, manager, staff, whoever, no one went and told the player, you have to go, we want to sell you. No one from Man United told HOJLUND, you're out of the project. So HOJLUND at the moment feels comfortable, wants to stay at United, and wants to fight for the place at Manchester United. Then if Man United will go strong and say, okay, we need to sell, we will see. But at the moment, the situation for HOJLUND is that the player wants to stay, and his dream is still to succeed at Manchester United. Then if United will go to the player and say, you have to go, this situation could be different. So let's follow this case, but for sure, Man United are still trying for Benjamin Sesko. And so guys, let me know your thoughts on all these stories from Sesko to Garnacho, Xavi Simons, HOJLUND, Hato, O'Reilly, but also Koundé, Frenkie de Jong. I wait for your opinion here in comments. Remember to like this video, turn on the notification bell, subscribe to the channel. See you soon. Ciao.